Are live, it says. Well, we'll see if it pops up that way over here. Good morning. How are you this morning? I hope everybody's well. Good morning, Tina, Carol, Tennessee Bears with us today. We hope. Sometimes he's not sure. Slept good last night. I just didn't get to sleep early enough. That's partly because Brenda and I started watching. Oh, let's see, Andor, I believe it is on the Disney Channel. One of you ladies could probably confirm that. We had never watched it. I'm not even sure I realized it was a series. Pardon me. So we stayed up and watched. We were going to watch a couple and go to bed, but we ended up watching more than that. We binged a few. I guess the term is because I was kind of like, or we were kind of like, hmm, I'd like to know just a little bit more about this. And they'd end it, of course, as they do, and I'd be like, just a little bit more. I thought Cassian Andor was, I didn't realize his last name was Andor until last night. I thought Cassian Andor was an interesting character in Rogue One. So now I know where he came from. Well, we're learning where he came from. Either one of you guys watched that? Everyone's being really quiet. Tony O'Tower, good morning. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Shine chat room and live show. I'm definitely down to learn more about small world today. That's pretty. I mean, so far, Carol, it seems it's pretty good. It's gotten a lot of rave reviews, of course. Excuse me. Tony O'Tower, have you been with us before? I could call you Tony, or I could call you TOT. Saw your thumbnail and ran here and thank you. Oh, and thank you, Corky. You'll find that we're a small but welcoming group. At least I feel that way. And we'll just kind of chit chat here for a few minutes and see. Oh, so you are here about Disney, so that's it. That's cool. Well, I'm not going to get too deep into the Disney thing, but I am going to talk about it a little bit. And oh, I just about forgot something. Chat amongst yourselves a minute. I've got to fix something real quick. I forgot to do something really important. So bear with me, please. For some reason, you guys will not be the least bit surprised about this. For some reason, I'm having trouble finding things this morning. Tony, you've not been with us before. You probably won't realize that. Okay, I'm kind of a. I'm not a. I wouldn't call myself a Luddite. Nor would I call myself totally illiterate about computers and all things related, but I'm not always as keen and alert on Saturday morning as I should be. And, pardon me, I keep dropping some. some and this cough just will not go away. And for some reason, I scanned some pictures this morning that I discovered last night. Brenda popped out on me last night, and I realized that at least one of them was really important. And it looks like now I may just have to hold them up and show them to you. Why, oh, why? For some reason, my computer is not reading my SD card, which is a problem I've had for some time. I never have been very happy with the card readers on the desktops I've owned. And if anybody's commenting on any of this, I can't see it at the moment, so bear with me. Took me a while to learn about computers, and my weekend is going, well, thanks for that. Oh, good. This is my first time, and you can call me either. I also go by Totter, T-O-T. Well, that makes sense. With a side of chili cheese. Well, let's. How'd you find Tony? You say you saw my thumbnail, and I'm only asking this as I try to find this errant card because I don't always understand how people, find me. Dude, I'm gonna treat this like the old Nintendo cartridge and blow on it because that always made the Nintendos work. But it sure isn't making that work. I don't know. There's something going on, I guess, with that. I'll, I'll have to mess with that later. So I'll hold the card. I'll hold the photos up. We'll get to that in a minute. Hey, Maple Bacon, welcome in, buddy. How's my friend from the far, far north? Yeah, not far, far, maybe just far. What about those Jets, buddy? Is Mark coming on this morning? No. Oh, I forgot to mention that. Mark will not be here this morning. I also heard your name from Doug today, along with Small World being one of my favorites. Oh, Disney content does pique curiosity. Also blow on my CDs and compact flashcards. Does any of it ever work, Tony? Well, I'll have to thank Doug for that. Um, they do not bad. 4 more games to go for the series. How's that? How's that? I thought they were 2-1. Yeah, it is. I'll have to thank Doug. I'll have to go online, go over his, or find him online and follow up with that. It's a 50-50 chance. I'm not sure I'd even give it that much this morning. Oh, that's great. Oh, okay. I already said that. Well, I thought I saw something in my beard, which is not unusual. Kind of like that guy on I can't think of his name right now. The old guy on Lord of the Rings that has the birds and stuff in his beard. Sometimes I feel a little bit like that. Most of my stuff in my beard is something I've eaten. Doug is so sportive and great with community. Some of my compact flashcards can be stubborn. I can't figure it out. Of course, it's a micro SD card in an adapter like this. And there's the card. Maybe that's the problem. I didn't blow on this one. And I just used it a few minutes ago in my scanner, at which time it seemed to work fine. Pardon me. Okay, it's probably not going to work. I'll have to. Thank you, Carol, for that. And Tony has a side also. I'll put that in here. Or Carol can. I find yelling at my computer helps. It doesn't fix the tech issue, but oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that. It does make me feel better though, often. Here's here is Tony. Okay, why did that not print? Right there, should be. Somebody check that and see if it works. Since I'm obviously not having a lot of luck today. Well, our Easter was quiet. And we had nice weather last week. Now today is yesterday. Woo! We had another one of those hard storms blow through here last night. Right, well, yesterday I should say. Yesterday afternoon, Brenda was taking a nap, and I was up here, and she didn't even hear it. And again, it rolled in from the east or the west, and yeah, pretty much straight due west, I guess. And I heard it coming before it got here, and I looked out, and all the trees were dancing, and the roof started rattling over my head, and I thought, oh, but it hit hard. I mean, and then it rained like they wouldn't have it for a little while, and then finally it quit. But it got everything nice and soaked, and then it sprinkled most of the rest of the day and the night. So we've had a good rain. Now today it's probably going to do about the same thing. Although right now the sun's trying to come out, and I'd really like for the sun to come out. You guys went out for brunch on Easter to a place called the Pancake House. All right. Why does that not surprise me terribly, Mike? Did you have maple pancakes, or did you at least eat maple syrup on your pancakes? Syrup, maple syrup, excuse me. I don't have to tell the story about my syrup, why I say that. Got to see some nephews. Oh, cool, Carol. Well, that's really cool that you got. They came back east, or did they just come back for Easter, or are they back here on a whirlwind see all the Eastern kin kind of trip, or too much to choose from? It's unbelievable. It was heaven, so was the food. Oh, Mike, you're killing me, buddy. I'm gonna have to talk Brenda into making some, or I will have to make some. Well, Carol, that's great. I'm glad they got to do that. You should have brought them in. You should have brought them in the room. We could have chatted about Colorado, and I could have asked the always ubiquitous dumb question. Hey, we got a guy out there named. Why can I not suddenly remember his name? Oh, it's sad. Anyway, we could have said, "Do you know so and so?" That's pleasant. I know some people in Massachusetts. Oop, wrong one. Uh, Chili fries are the best. Go Tigers. And Mabel Bacon said Tina actually, where's Tina? I missed Tina's. Did they have donuts, Mike? Hi, they actually did not have any donuts. They had waffles, spicy chicken, banana split waffles. Oh my, I could go on. Did you try the spicy chicken and waffles, Mike? Tell after the show you should go. Ian's, Ian. Yeah, we could ask your nephew. Hey, do you know Ian? Of course, nobody ever does. Oh, I'll have to look for that. You know what, Tina or Carol? I got to make sure I've even got his IG site. Could you send me that in a DM or in the, in Instagram or something? Maybe make sure I've got it. That menu's making my mouth water. I do love myself a giant stack of pancakes with some homemade butter. If I ever told the story about the boy from Kansas that I lived with in Florida, the banana split waffles didn't have spicy. Banana split waffles and spicy chicken all in one plate. That would be. I don't know if I'd like that either, Carol. Okay, why? I don't know. I think that was trying to tell me I misspelled something or did something wrong, which I'm sure I do have. But I don't need to be reminded of it all the time. I have a feeling, I have this funny feeling that, thank you, Carol. I have this funny feeling that my wife has fallen back to sleep. Let's see if I can just maybe wake her up. Hey, say hi to the chat room. Hi, everybody. You want to pop in or you're busy? I don't actually have you on speakerphone, but I could. Hang on. Why not? Now say hello. I'm listening to. Oh, you're listening to the show. Well, I hear you echoing now. Well, okay. You hadn't. Have you said hi? Not yet. Okay. All right. Bye. Bye bye. She was listening, but she's a little groggy. She said she was going to lay back down for a few minutes. And I knew what that meant. That meant that there was probably a nap going to ensue. Tell you what, guys, I'm going to open up my show for the day because I have a bunch of just nonsensical stuff I want to go through. Not nonsensical, but I hope not terribly boring. It's probably not going to be what. If I said it's not what you usually get from me, you guys might laugh because I'm not sure what that is either. No, no. There we go. Okay, I'm not sure if this is going to work. No, probably not. I wanted to open that up in a different way, but if I do that, I can't see you guys. So, your show is like a box. It is, Carol. Thank you. I'm going to take that as a compliment. The thing about it is, unless even though it's my box of chocolate, sometimes I don't know either. Hi, Julie McGowan. Welcome. Welcome into the Saturday Morning Shine chat room. And whatever. That did. Oh, there. That didn't work. Hang on, guys. I did that wrong. Now, there's a shocker. Oh, you know what's wrong? Where did my show go? I accidentally closed it. So you can mark that one down, somebody. It's keeping score. There we go. Hey, Dave, Disney Dreams is here. Mike's got all the donuts, buddy. Anybody want a couple of hounds? Oh, zippity doo dad. Thank you. I got to go in and thank Doug for sending some folks over to the show. I appreciate that. Well, today's a little bit off because I usually have a cohort in crime that co-narrates or we talk over each other, whichever way you want to look at it. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to go off screen just a second. Okay, that was fixed. And of course, as per me, I screwed that up too. How's Dave's Disney Dreams and what's going on in Florida today? Oh, Carol's got the donuts. Thank you, Carol, for bringing donuts today. Mike, you're kind of picky for a guy that's going to go to somebody else's house and get donuts. You know that? So the reason there's a Disney link today is if you can see the thumbnail. When Walt Disney opened up It's a Small World in the 1964 World's Fair, Pepsi Cola sponsored that pavilion. Now, Walt did, I believe it's 3 shows. He did one for Ford Motor Company. He did one for General Electric, which we all know as the Carousel of Progress. And he did It's a Small World in the UNICEF Pavilion, which was sponsored by Pepsi Cola. Now, this show got started because last week we talked just a little bit about the sugar wars that have gone on in the past. And I'm going to be honest with you, I could not find some of the things that I've always heard. Now, I did read, well, no, I'll take that back. I did read some stuff. I do have part of the answers for that, but I couldn't find some of the more nefarious things that I believe were going on. At least that's that's the legend. Perhaps that's not all true. Dave says it's warm, hot, sunny, and don't he doesn't want to do laundry, buddy. I get that. Nobody wants to do laundry. I mean, no, nobody wants to do laundry. What else is going on? Thank you again, Carol. Carol, post that several times. Oh, and I didn't ask. Does um, Julie, do you have a website or a web page or a YouTube channel? If you do, we'd be more than happy to look into that and post that for you. I'm pretty much willing to post about anything. I'm not real. I try to be very open minded about that sort of thing. I mean, I've even posted, you know, things from people who have sporting teams that I don't happen to root. Hey, Diana, good morning. Always good to see you. It's it's always good to have folks from the Great White North here to bit with us. I'm proud to call you friends, and all the other Canadians up there who are happy going about their own business. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about this. And you have to bear with me, guys, if you're new here. I kind of go through a few other things before we get there. If you don't mind, hit the like button while you're here, and consider subscribing to the channel. If you go back and look, almost bet you'll find something that might pique your interest. Very eclectic show. We talk about everything from history to ancient history to prehistoric history, uh, and other events of the day. This is kind of a casual week because, like I said, my cohort in crime's not here. And I didn't finish telling that story. I will right here. Mark is on a cattle roundup today. And so next week, I believe what we're going to do, he's going to try to take a bunch of pictures while he's there today and work. Now he's working cowboy, but as he's mentioned before, he's an old cowboy now, so he don't get off his horse. So he shouldn't be down on the ground wrangling cattle or anything, but he should be able to take some pictures. And I don't know if he'll take Caitlin with him. I started to suggest that. There's a ranch that is adjacent to his property. He lives in Wyoming, for those who might not know, and he's always helped with his family's roundups every year. And there's a connection there. I think it's because they've worked with him in the past when he was still in worked for the wildlife agency in Wyoming. And they were really good about working with the wildlife department in, conservation efforts and different things. And I think they allow him to hunt on some really prime property up there that they own. But other than that, he does it because they're neighbors and friends, and we like to help our neighbors when we can. And Mark has done that. He's been working with them for quite a few years now, and so that's where he's at today. They decided to do their annual calf roundup and cattle branding or calf branding, castrations. We have a plan. If you need to sign Carol, please hand out the adult approval slips, since Tim may mention things of a sensitive nature like castration. They vaccinate all the calves, check them out generally for health, make sure everybody's okay and nobody's got snotty nose or runny eyes. and they do castrate the bulls. That they much rather have steers running around on the property than bulls. Well, within some reason. And on top of that, and then whatever else they find that they need to take care of. But we'll talk about that next week. And I think what I'm going to do, my plan is to put together a show about the history of cattle roundups in the West, and then use his as examples. This still happens. People still do this out there. I'm only signing a permission slip if it comes with a donut and coffee. Well, now Carol has the donuts today, Diana. Now I don't know about coffee. Hello, Brenda Pruitt. Good to know about the donuts. I'll get some ready for next week. Oh, Maple Bacon likes maple bacon donuts. He is Canadian after all. He never has said if he likes what we Americans refer to as Canadian bacon or not on his donuts. So I just assume he likes cured bacon like everybody else down here likes. Now some people do like Canadian bacon on their egg McMuffin, but I'm an old fashioned bacon kind of guy. I could actually drive the donuts over to Julie. The rest of you will have to come pick them up. Carol, that's not good. Carol, I bet if you really studied it, I'll bet you're not that far away from maple bacon and Diana. Tell me I'm good with any type of bacon, actually, especially when somebody else makes it. Oh, Tony, you have a teleportation machine? Please share. I know it is, Diana, but it's funny down here. Down here, they call it Canadian. Do you got? I mean, is there a variety of ham you guys call Canadian bacon? I've always said the same thing. It's just a ham, but it's in the fifth dimension. Dang it. So anyway, I digress, and you'll find that I do that a lot too, unless I'm really focused. So I usually do some things like what happened today? What happened in history on this day? Well, in 1607, the Virginia Company made landfall at Cape Henry, in Virginia, and started actually the first English colony in America. Now, I'm not sure where that fits in with the Jamestown colony, and maybe it's the same one, but they referred to it as Cape Henry. So I didn't dig into that a whole lot. It's called Canadian. Wait a minute now. Now, Diana, I can't let that go. It's called Canadian bacon or pea meal bacon. Now, where does the term pea meal come from? I'm going to look that up. Pea meal refers to both the ground dried peas used to coat cured meats and the cured meat itself, specifically pea meal ham. Pea meal bacon, also known as back bacon or Canadian bacon, is a cured pork loin rolled in cornmeal, though traditionally it was rolled in ground peas. It's a Canadian specialty. What? Wait a minute. This is not. This is completely blowing my mind. Oh hell! Now I'm gonna have to do it. I'll have to do a whole show on how to cure ham. I've never heard of that. Thank you, Diana, for expanding my reservoir of useless knowledge. But I've never heard of pea meal bacon or ham. Okay. Am I the only one here who has never heard of pea meal ham? Question: Tina says, do Canadians call it Canadian bacon or just bacon? And another question. Now that's two in one text message. Tina, you're pushing it. Do you have American bacon? And if so, do you call it American bacon? I'm thinking they just call it bacon, but I'll let them answer that. Tony says he eats Canadian bacon with my mashed potatoes. If I want to refer, I'm not going to say that right now because if Canadian bacon And that kind of bacon has to be pea meal cured. I'm not sure I've ever seen that. I'm not sure I've ever seen ham cured, wrapped, rolled in cornmeal. We sugar and salt things down here. Tina call Canadian bacon, and regular bacon. It's just bacon. I never heard of that either. I got to study that. That's fascinating. Hang on a minute. I got to write that down in Tim's little book of things to try to remember. Because, as you all know, if I don't write it down, Tim's little mind of things to remember doesn't always work right. Pea meal bacon or ham. I will refer to that as a curing method. I'm serious. I'm going to look that up. That's fascinating to me. Down here, everything's pretty much salt cured, or as we say, sugar cured. But even sugar cured ham is salty. Now, not all ham is done that way. You can buy hams down here that aren't. I don't know how they preserve them or are fresh, but growing up, I had country ham, what we call country ham, or help me out here, Brendan. Is there another word we call for that? Anyway, but they're not pea meal. So everybody calls it Canadian bacon. And no, I've never heard of female bacon. Not female, Tina, it's P-mail. P-E-A-M-E-A-L-E, P-meal. Excuse me. If I'm not saying it right. You guys gotta, my mouth is extremely dry right now. I like bacon wrapped in dates and peppers with cream cheese. Tony, that's a very good point. And my wife used to do, well, my mom and my wife used to make something called ham rolls, and it had ham, slices of ham, and it was rolled around some sort of cream cheese. Brenda, tell us what a ham roll had in it. Cornmeal bacon. Yeah, Tony, I got to look all that up. That you guys have just about blew my mind today. But as I said, I really appreciate that because that'll expand my repertoire of things, trivial things I can pack in my brain, and someday they'll pop out maybe in a convenient moment. Scrapple? Scrapple's different. Now, I know what scrapple is. Well, I know what we call scrapple. Scrapple is like, well, real scrapple down here had either pig brains or squirrel brains in it. And it was jelly looking. Thank you. I was wrangling hounds and heard you call for permission slips, and well, my mind went there. Okay. Oh, I'm hurting right now, guys. Bear with me. I may have to stand up for a minute. Yeah, I'll look up scrapple too. I think scrapple, and of course there's head cheese, and that's different. None of which sounds good to me. But I'm pretty sure scrapple has hog brains in it, or that's where and head meat. If one of you knows, you're welcome to speak up, or if you want to look at, don't forget the dozen raw oysters on the side. Timmy, you have to come visit. We'll show you a whole new. You will, Diana. I'm telling you, two things about that. One is I'd love to, and I want to, because I'd love to come see Canada. And two, I'm always looking for food. All right, Julie says Pennsylvania scrapple is everything but the oink mixed with cornmeal and fried. Okay. Now I did know they sliced it and fried it. That I did know. Okay, back to the show to get back on track here. So what happened on this day? Virginia Company. In 1865, this is the day that Union cavalry troopers located, cornered, and killed John Wilkes Booth, the assassin of Abraham Lincoln. They found him in a tobacco barn in Virginia. I think it was at that time they weren't sure if the owners of the barn were in cahoots with Booth because they were in Virginia after all, which was not that happy about the whole war thing. And but I don't think they ever did. I don't think they did anything. I don't think that barn owner got hung or anything like that. And Diana and Mike, I kind of put this in here for you guys. I'm sure you know all about this. Well, maybe you do. I actually learned about this by watching the Murdoch Murder Mystery Show that the CBC has produced for quite a few years now. Brenda and I, one of our favorite shows on television ever. In fact, we own most of the seasons on DVD. 1900, fire destroyed the Canadian cities of Ottawa and Hull, which I assume are together. Boy, I spelled that wrong, reducing them to ashes in only 12 hours. 12,000 were left without homes. 12,000 people. Gee, many Christmas. Please pardon all the misspelled words and stuff today. I'm corner should have been cornered, and reducing is not reducing. And so please forgive. Carol, I know you're a school teacher, so please just, let it slide today. If Mark was here, he'd be giving me hell. Mark's a stickler for grammar and spell words too. My wife is the spelling queen here, and she didn't review this. 1920, ice hockey made it to the Olympics and debuted at the Antwerp Games. Canadian center Frank Frederickson scored 7 goals in Canada's 12-1 victory over Sweden for the gold medal. And then on the thing I read that on, they said Canada drubbed Sweden. I thought I'd just say they won. I thought drubbing sounded a little, maybe not that nice. Welcome everybody watching this morning and join us. Please don't forget to thank you, Mike. Blame it on spell check. Well, I could do that, Tina. Spell check doesn't know the difference, so you're probably you could be right actually, or partially, because I rely on spell check probably too much. The first clinical trials of the Jonas Salk polio vaccine started today in Fairfax in 1954 in Fairfax County, Virginia. Not too many years after that, I remember lining up for polio vaccines, and of course I was worried about getting a shot because I was a weak kid at that time. I was probably 10 years after that. About I was 5 or 6, maybe 7, and but we didn't get a shot. We got a little cube of sugar that had this red stuff on it, and we took that, and we were good to go. And we did that. I remember doing that 2 or 3 times. And then, fun fact, when I went away to college in 1975, one of the things I had to do before I could go to Florida, and I'm not sure if that was a Florida rule or not, but it was somebody's rule. I had to get a booster, a polio vaccine booster at the age of about 18 before I went away to college. Now I don't know if they still require that or not. This is also the day that the Chernobyl disaster occurred, which was at that time was in the Ukrainian part of the Soviet Socialist Republic, or AKA the Soviet Union or Russia, what we used to know as the Soviet. Let's see, United. I always thought it was the United Soviet Socialist Republic. Maybe it was the Ukraine. No, it wasn't Ukrainian. I mean, that part was, but not the whole thing. And in 1991, 55 tornadoes broke out in the central U.S. Andover, Kansas recorded the only F5 out of that group. If that's the one I'm thinking about, Ohio had like 30 that day or something. They got hit hard. I need to get a yellow fever vaccine. Oh, do you, Tony? Where are you going? You going down to Panama or someplace? or just come to the South. Okay, next slide, please. Now, I thought, and this is where I said it's going to be a little bit long today because I got off on a whole different, I dug a deep hole. So I just wanted to pull up some people who were born on today, and I decided I was being unfair by doing mostly men, so I decided to do a page of men and a page of women because I wanted to be fair about this. Because everybody knows, you guys know, I try to be somewhat level. So I decided to break it up. This was and these are, birth dates. Commodore, I'm going to guess that's Isaac Hopkins was born. Commodore Hopkins was the only commander in chief of the Continental Navy during the American Revolution. We think about George Washington was the head of was the commander in chief at that time, is what they called it, not the president. Well, we didn't have a president. Was the commander in chief of all the army. And of course, they tied a lot of things in with army back then. They tied them together, but we don't think about the Navy much. And I've always thought about John Paul Jones when I think about the early American Navy. But this gentleman was the first Commodore. And he was born in 1718 and he passed away in 1802, which was quite, he saw a lot of interesting things. 1774, Christian Leopold van, I don't know if that's Bach. I'm not sure how they say that in Germany, so please forgive me. He's a German geologist and paleontologist. And one of the things he was known for was he helped describe and figure out the Jurassic system of, putting things in a time period. Hey, John, welcome in. Surf Bum is here. Yeah, Mark is rounding up cattle today, John. So he's probably on his horse. I cannot talk. Not honeycomb. Yeah, honeycomb today. Mark has a buckskin. Kind of horses he got. It ties with Disney. That's why I'm trying to remember. Disney made a movie about it. Come on, man, work today. I'm sure we talked about these horses. Anybody else remember? Justin, somebody had a horse. That's the name of the movie. It was a movie that was actually made after Walt passed away, but it was on Sunday night show. It was 2 parts. Morgan, Justin Morgan. Mark has Morgan horses, or he has a couple of Morgans, and actually he has 3 because one of his Morgan mares, named that Bobby Socks, gave birth to Luna. And Luna, and for all you guys who remember Luna, she's about 2.5 now, 2 years, so many months, is in school learning how to, Mark's working with her to teach her how to ride and all that. So I'm wishing him luck and hoping he doesn't get killed in the process. He's not as young as he used to be. But anyway, the Jurassic system, describing the Jurassic system is kind of important here again because we talk about things like that at times. John, did you say something else that I missed? Guys, I won't be able to keep up with them. I won't be able to keep up with chat. You guys will have to help me. Carol, Tina, you guys. Can you guys post? You can't post things on the screen, can you? I need to get you guys in the StreamYard menu chat thing so you can do that. I think. Anyway, I'll try to do that. Okay. 1785, on this day, the French-American painter John James Audubon was born. Again, you guys know that John James Audubon is kind of important to me because I'm a bird guy. Well, and Mark is a bird guy extraordinaire. And I love his paintings and all. He identified and created some of the earliest visual records of the birds in this country. And something just flew by my window. That was either a large bee or a hummingbird. If it's a hummingbird, I need to get a feeder out. And John James Audubon passed away in 1851. So again, he lived a pretty good long life. Frederick Law Olmsted, the American journalist and designer, co-designed Central Park, which I thought was kind of interesting. I'm guessing y'all want donuts. Yeah, we want donuts, John. You gonna go get some more? Carol has them today, so talk to Carol. 1916, RAF Wing Commander Kenneth Horatio Wallace, British aviator, engineer, and inventor, was born. Wallace worked at, fun fact here, and this is why I put him in here. Wallace worked as Sean Connery's stunt pilot in the 1967 James Bond film You Only Live Twice, where he flew his WA-116S named Little Nellie. Commander Wallace was an inventor who thought that the gyrocopter was a much underused and underappreciated aerial vehicle for observation, especially in military applications. So I'm sure he was more than happy to fly little Nellie around in the movie and get some advertising. In fact, the picture I found of him looked like he was sitting in the very copter they used in that movie. So if you guys have seen You Only Live Twice, you know what I'm talking about. And if you've never seen You Only Live Twice, James Bond used a small and fast little gyrocopter, which is it's not a helicopter. Helicopters use their rotor to get lift, but also that's where the power comes from. The gyrocopter uses the rotor system as a rotating wing, but it has a motor in the back that pushes it so it gets up to speed and goes. Anyway, they're kind of neat, and I've always been sort of interested in them. You guys know, again, about my aviation background if you've been here very long. So you know for me, that's a big deal. But anyway, I put him in there because he flew Little Nellie. I always thought that was a great movie, especially that part. 1917, baseball player Sal Magley was born. He was a player and coach. He lived in 1992. Not bad. And I put this last one in here because I really like this guy's music. 1943, Gary Wright, American singer-songwriter, keyboard player, and producer, was and perhaps best known for his hit song "Dreamweaver." There was an album Dreamweaver, and it had some other songs on it that made airplay. In this country, if it doesn't make it to the radio, back when we listened to radio, most people don't know who musicians are. I used to listen to a progressive rock station growing up, which was an FM back then was a thing, and it was an FM station that played music you didn't hear on, the regular commercial radio stations of the day. Brenda listened to what I called bubblegum music, but today it's pop music or popular music of various kinds. And I listened to what one producer called color radio. I'll tell you about that sometime. That whole story. Anyway, Gary Wright. And Gary Wright just passed away recently in 2023, and I was sad to hear that. I didn't know that. Next, I said we were going to do men and women. Hey, Kay Atwood, welcome in. Glad you made it. We've got some guests with us today. Say hi to Tony and say hi to Julie if she's still here. Hopefully she is. I may be boring people and running them off. I hope not. but I have to bear with that. So let's see what the next slide brings. And I even highlighted that. And the reason I highlighted it actually was to make sure I could see it and read it, because there were more of these on here than I thought. 1886, Ma Rainey, American blues singer and songwriter, was born. She was dubbed early on as the mother of the blues, and that's partly because Ma Rainey recorded some of the very, I'm saying that backwards. She recorded music when music was first starting to be recorded, and so that probably helped her get that name, because there were certainly other blues singers out there. Anyway, Ma Rainey. 1889, Anita, I'm going to pronounce this Lose, and I'm not sure about that. She was an American author and playwright and screenwriter, was born. 1922, Janine Schwab, can you help me? It's Canadian, I don't know, or probably French Canadian. She was also a journalist and politician, and at one time was the Governor General of Canada. Diana, do you know if that is an older term for the Prime Minister? I'm not sure. Wasn't sure about that. Maybe an entirely different thing, but she was it, and I apologize for mispronouncing it. 1927, Anne McLaren, British scientist, was born. And of course, you guys know I love science. And one of her claims to fame was that she was probably, her work led to the ability to do human in vitro fertilization, which is kind of a big deal for some people. Trying to help. I'm so dry I couldn't hardly talk. On this day in 1933, Carol Burnett, the beloved American actress, singer, and producer, was born. And Carol is still with us. She is, what would that make her, about 92? Oh my God, I just realized she would be the same age as my mother. I didn't catch that last night. I should have picked up on that. So Carol is 92 and still with us. And to prove that I always try to be level and fair, 1970, Miss Melania Trump, Slovenian American model, and the 47th First Lady of the United States, was born. And she also is still with us. 1977, Samantha Cristoforetti, who was, I think, the first female Italian astronaut, was born. Now we get down to some stuff that's just, kind of weird, or not weird, but different. 1978, Stana Katic, Canadian actress who was in Castle, and she also appeared as a vampire in one of the early episodes of The Librarian, back when Noah Wiley was doing those kind of as a solo act. He was the librarian, which I really love those movies and shows. And it's coming back. I just found out last night they're bringing it back with a whole new group of librarians. So I'm excited. Anyway, I really liked her in Castle, and I thought she made a great vampire in that episode of The Librarian, and I can't remember the name of that particular show. Governor General represents the head of state. Okay. So that's who she was. I didn't go to the details of getting the dates when she was, but she was. I'm going to bet that she was the first female Governor General of Canada, but I could be wrong about that. And in 1983, Jessica Lynch was born. I don't know. Some of you may or may not. Some of you may remember Jessica Lynch. She was in the news. She served in the Army during the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And in an incident where her vehicle was attacked and blown up, she was captured by, I guess, the Iraqi, I don't know if it was the guard or anyway, by the Iraqi army, and then subsequently rescued on April 1st in 2003. And unique thing about that was that was the first rescue of prisoner of war since World War II, and the very first rescue of a female American POW. Jessica, the stories that came out about Jessica being a combatant and, fighting and firing her weapon till it jammed and all that stuff. She said she came out after she got home and recuperated or was healed up. She was injured, wounded. That those stories weren't true. They made those up for the hyperbole and to, I don't know, make a better story. Basically, she said she was a supply specialist, and when her vehicle was blown up, she was injured. I don't know if she said her weapon didn't fire, or wouldn't fire, or was damaged, but she was captured, and that she said so. The stories that came back about her were not true, and she did not like that. She was not happy with the. Oh, sorry guys, I'm really hurting here for a minute. I've had therapy this week, and my leg is hurting. That's the problem with therapy. It's probably helping, but it sure does hurt, and the effects linger. Yep, she was the first. Thank you, Diana. So, anyway, that's some men, women, and events that happened on this day. Now, I want to get to an important one. I'm going to leave that slide up. Hopefully, it won't interfere with what I'm going to do. I was about to forget somebody. I just said that Carol Burnett was the same age as my mother, and that's true. But my mother wasn't born today. My mother was born on the 29th, which is Tuesday. And I had a couple of pictures of my mother, so I thought I would. No, this is not true, Brenda. We misread this. This is my grandmother, and this photo, according to my mother, it says this was done. Either she was born on September 20th, 1899, which is probably right. But this is my grandmother at I'm going to guess 4, 5, 6 years old. I don't know how well that's showing up, but I know I'm getting really close with it. Can you guys see that at all? Tell you what, let me just do this for a moment because I want to show these pictures. And then I'll go back to the show. It's a little fuzzy, an old-fashioned black and white photograph. I wish we had the whole photograph that was the people beside her and in the background. But that's my grandmother at a very early age, my mother's mother. Now, my mother is in this picture. And I read the back of this again and realized and did not realize what they call this school. But that's my mom standing. Hang on, I got to flip it around here to make sure I'm right. Yeah, kind of in the middle, right? I was going to scan these in and draw pictures and arrows right there under my finger. That's my mother. And this was at the Grange Hall School. You know what? I may be misreading that. That might be my grandmother, but damn, she looks just like my mom. Well, if this is my mother, this is not 1910, so I may have misread these, but I do have a picture of my mother here for an absolute fact, and it's this one right here. On her wedding day. And that's my father here, of course. I could cover his face up. But that's my mom. And that dress that she's wearing was wool. I'm not sure, Brenda, do you remember, she make that? Anyway, she still had it. And when Kelly got old enough, Kelly could wear that dress, and Kelly was little. I mean, she was always a little skinny thing. My mom was a giant woman of probably 5'2", and that's their wedding day. And an uncle-in-law, whatever you want to call him, mom's oldest sister's husband married them. And I think the church was one. It was called Mount Pleasant, but I'm not sure. But it may have been near Greenville. Anyway, I know there's a glare on that, guys, so bear with me. And I'll have to find. I know I've got other pictures of Mom that she's not in a wedding situation. I'll have to try to find one maybe for next week. Something else I was going to mention though, real quick. I've talked about this on the show. John, if you're still here, this is a photograph that was taken of my father when he was in the hospital at Fort Dix, New Jersey. And I'm starting to not be able to talk again. Hang on. I know coffee probably dries me out more than it helps, but for a moment it wets me. And this is that picture. I've talked about this before because there's an interesting person in this picture. This is my dad laying in the bed. He had knee surgery. Oh my God, they butchered his knee. Back then, the Army docs had a reputation for being kind of rough and crude. The interesting thing about this is there's a gentleman that's sitting right here, two over from Dad, or the second one over from Dad. That is Mr. Ralph Stanley. And I don't know if you may or may not know who that is, but he is a very famous bluegrass player and singer who is, I'm not sure if he's still with us or not, but he very famous for his bluegrass. He played a mandolin. He's like one of the, kings of mandolin, or at least bluegrass mandolin. And I asked my dad about this years ago when I read this back, because what he did was, while he was in the hospital with all these gentlemen, they were all military. They were all in the Army. He wrote down all their names, and I know you can't see that very well. He wrote down all their names and where they were from, not their full addresses, but just hometowns. And Ralph Stanley was from Cockburn, Virginia, which is, I've looked him up. This is all true. It's the same guy. It is that Ralph Stanley. Plus, I mean, if you know the guy and saw him, you'd recognize him. There's Danny Kissinger, Don Pruitt, Howard Grindstaff from North Carolina. Danny Kissinger was from Indiana. Ralph Stanley from Virginia, and Wade Mullins, Wise, Virginia, which is not too far from us up over the mountains here in the state line. And one of the nurses wrote down her name and information. Her name was Ellen Courtner. She was the RN. So I'm guessing she's the one in the middle here, since she's wearing the nurse's cap and everything. And that used to be a really big deal. Now, this lady is older, and I'm thinking she looks like the proverbial Nurse Cratchit. I'm thinking she's probably the one that told you to shut up, quit whining, and jabbed a needle in your butt. I just see her in every war movie I've ever seen. There's a nurse Cratchit type character who's gruff and hateful, but usually is really good at her job. I don't know. I kind of think that's her. I was trying. If you could see this picture, these guys are all in the old metal beds. The guy on the very end, last one over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. The fifth guy, who is Wade Mullen, he's in a bed with all the trappings overhead for traction, which looks like they just made it out of water pipe. But that's a military hospital from the early 50s, Korean War. My dad was in during the Korean War, and this is probably the reason he wasn't in Korea. I'm not gonna, he did his job in the States. He got injured here and had to have surgery on his knee, which I'm sure made him uneligible as a combatant. Usually that sort of thing knocks you out or can knock you out. And so he stayed here and worked here training soldiers who eventually went to war. And this is just this is a photo of my dad as a young man, a better picture of him as a young man. And this is, I almost hate to say this. This was on the bulletin when he passed away from the funeral home. Who took care of that? My mom and my dad. And dad, being military and had rights to be buried in the Mountain Home National Military Cemetery, had a full military funeral, which we got to attend. I could barely move. That's when I hurt my back. My spinal cord injury happened about 2 days before my dad passed away. I was barely able to even go to the funeral. I was using a walker, but they were practically having to carry me everywhere I went. Yeah, okay, that's oftentimes the problem. We got lucky in a few cases, not all, but when we got together or family got together sometimes as a group, they would write on the backs of them so we would know, down the road, somebody in that group was smart enough to know that, down the road, these kids might want to know who all these people are and they're not going to have a clue. And that's still true. I mean, if those photos, well, that picture of my dad in the hospital, which turned out to have someone very famous in it, we would never know who all these people were, and I may never have realized that was Ralph Stanley. I mean, yeah, when I look at the pictures of the two, I get it, but I might not have ever thought about it. Anyway, moving on with the show. We'll go on. We'll move on. Thanks for bearing with me on all that, guys. Happy birthday to all these folks today. Happy birthday to my mother next week. And I'm glad I thought of that. It's I'm gonna need to go visit the cemetery. My mom and my dad, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but if you have military honors and are able to be buried in a national cemetery, your wife, if she's not even if she's not was not an active member of the military, she was still a veteran's wife. They can be buried with them, and the way they do that is whoever passes away. Well, actually, I think my mom passed away, and then my dad passed away, so they put them in the same grave. Um, the headstone on one side has my mother's information, and on the other side, which they flipped the stone when Dad passed away, they flipped the stone, and it has all his, Roy Don Pruitt, born this day, served and military stuff, and they're buried together. And I thought when I found out about doing that, uh, when Mom passed away, I didn't know you could do that. So that's really cool. And if you look around that cemetery, we found quite a few of that situation. Tony, that's a really good idea. I need to start doing that too. I don't know how you're labeling them, but of course I save them. Well, I don't always name them individually. I just got water all over me, guys. Apologize. But now I'm a sloppy guy. Put that somewhere there out of the way because I know I'm going to need it again. Um, but you can go right on if you Photoshop or something. You can go right in and put that, or probably Adobe or something. I know I can do it in if I did a slideshow of them, I could save them on right on them. Good idea. I need to think about doing more of that. You use the iPhone's photo. Oh, okay. Huh. I'm the other phone company kind of got the other phone got kind of got, and I have Samsungs, and I don't know if they'll do that or not. That's it. That's cool. I'll have to look into that. I tend to say back. Oh, I do too. I got tons of backups. I was an old fashioned photographer when I shot film, and I might shoot 400. I know it seemed like I'd shoot a dozen, let's say a dozen pictures of any given subject, and perhaps even more. And I'd always have extra, and people didn't understand that. But you may only get one shot at that photo, so do the best you can. And the more pictures you take, the thinking was the more likely you are to get a good one. And so, shot, and shot. Okay, I was going to talk about a little bit about Pepsi Cola. Got started on this because we talked a little bit last week about the sugar wars and how that affected these groups. And I just happen to be a Pepsi Cola fan. So I thought I'd just talk about this a little bit. I'm not going to get in a lot of details. I've got more slides with just pictures than I do content, but I do have some. Pepsi was originally created in Burn, North Carolina, which if you know geography, or if you don't know, Burn is almost on the east coast in North Carolina. It's certainly in the tidal area, and it's in that part of Tidewater is usually referred to in Virginia, but North Carolina has a Tidewater area also. Okay, is South Carolina referred to Tidewater, the low part, when you get down towards the ocean, where you live? I think where you live, or below once you get past where you live in the mountains. Anyway, then where the states where they start leveling out, they call that Tidewater in some cases. Anyway, that's where Pepsi was created. His name was Caleb Bradham, and he was a pharmacist, which is where a lot of this stuff came from. Coca-Cola started the same way, in a different location. That's actually controversial because some people say it started in Chattanooga, and some people say it came from Atlanta, or at least Georgia. He originally just called it Brad's drink, and the reason it's called Pepsi was because it has pepsin in it, which was supposed to be good for digestion. I'll mention that here again in a minute. So when he first came out with it, it was just sold in his drugstore. But then later on, after they renamed it to Pepsi Cola in 1898, and again, it was Pepsi because of its supposed digestive benefits. And of course, now we just say, most of the time, we just say Pepsi. And that's the official name was just changed to Pepsi in 1961. I thought it was interesting. I've got it down at the bottom, but it was written on some early advertisements as the original pure food drink. There's a little sign there in Caleb's hometown, and where he created Pepsi, and that's a simulation, obviously, of the guy in his pharmacy doing it. And that guy reminds me of also the one the I can't think of his name now. The guy that sits in the rocking chair in the Carousel of Progress. What is Tony? I lost years of photo. I hate when that happened. I have done that too because I had stuff on a computer that crashed. And I did not have them backed up properly. So I'm going to talk more about Pepsi for a minute, and then I'll talk about the sugar situation. This was the first logo for Pepsi, and that banner below that represents the changes through time. And the stuff I started remembering was probably the 53 logo and then on. I do remember some of these changes though, because the bottles changed back then. Let's see, throwaway bottles didn't really start catching on till the late, mid to late 70s, maybe early, but we didn't start seeing them a lot until later when I drove a Coke truck. I should say, when I drove a soft drink truck, our disposable bottles were still glass, but they were thinner glass. And then we also started doing 2 liters or 1 liters, and even some 3 liter bottles, but they were glass and returnables. I'm not sure if Pepsi did that. Like I said, I was driving Brand X's trucks back then, and that was a temporary job I had just because I needed a job and they were hiring. And they paid for the times. They paid me. I think I started working for them making about $2.45 an hour, maybe $2.25. I don't know if Brenda, I don't know if you remember that or not, but I eventually worked my way up to maybe 4. Yeah, if you work, that was an example of working. If you work hard and bust your butt, you can be promoted fairly quickly, because I only worked for them about 6 months, nearly double my salary, I think. Did you guys have Pick-a-Pop? No, I don't think so. Describe Pick-a-Pop, Diana. So anyway, this is sort of the evolution of the logo, and I have a lot about this, so because that's how people know it. This was the plaque that's outside or inside that building that I just showed you. That was where his pharmacy stood in 1898. And that's another actual picture of the gentleman. The banner on the right is actually, obviously it's longer, and it was a history of the 2 major colas in America, and almost maybe the world even, and kind of when they started. And you can see that Coke was created, as far as we know, by John S. Pemberton in 1886. Pepsi was in 1898. So, 12 years later. So who knows? Maybe he drank a Coke and decided he could do better. Maybe he just heard that some pharmacies were selling sodas, and all this was syrup and soda fountain stuff, what we used to call soda jerks. Oh, I'm not showing my slides. Sorry, guys. I got to go back and present that right. I apologize. Thank you, Carol. I'm going to have to stop it and bring it back, which I've already done. You guys don't see it. Okay, I need to back up some then, don't I? I'll go through these quick. This is just a little thing about where it was born. Caleb Bradham. I didn't, there's the marker along the road in his hometown in Bern, North Carolina. That's a recreation of him in his drugstore. That's also in Bern. I was saying that gentleman kind of reminds me of the guy in the rocking chair in the Carousel of Progress. The logo, this is the original logo, and then you see it through time and where we are. Well, this was done in 2009. It really hasn't changed much now. They've moved it around a little bit, and sometimes Pepsi is vertically, but the globe, they call it, the round part, the blue, red, white, and blue, has been the standard for, well, they've used it for a long time, but they kind of made it standalone. Let me hide this so I can see better. But at least in 96. But if you look, it's always kind of been there. Diane says it was a store. It was a store that had all kinds of pop. Tell you from the north. You got a case and you picked your pop. Maybe just a Canadian thing. It's So when you say pick the pop, I mean, are you talking about Coca-Cola, Pepsi Cola, Sprite, 7-Up, that kind of thing? or were they actually making it, mixing it right there on the spot like they used to do down here? My mom used to talk about going to the drugstore, which was a big deal back then for them to even go into town. My mom had to catch a train. They used to go stand by the railroad tracks, and the train would actually stop for them. And she said she remembered it costing them a dime to ride into town, which was Kingsport, Tennessee. And they would go, and while they were there, sometimes they'd get to go to the drugstore and they'd go to the soda fountain, and she would get a soda, whatever they were selling, Pepsi or Coke, and have vanilla added to it. So it was a vanilla Pepsi or a vanilla Coke, which they make sometimes. You can, I know you can buy vanilla Pepsis. I've got some over there in my refrigerator, and actually they're vanilla Dr. Peppers. Um, so we used to do that here, but not so much anymore. But but you remember that, Diane? That's your lifetime, correct? So anyway, I showed that, and then I moved to this. It was just the plaque that's outside on that building. Um, this is an actual picture of Mr. Bradham. I had to expand it. It's not great, and I apologize for that, but the picture was small. Whoops. But that's him versus the one that's in that recreation. This was another banner I found. That the only reason I put this on here was to compare so you could see that Coke was created in 1886, and then Pepsi came along in 1898. This poster or sign that you could get to put on the wall obviously went down and had a lot more stuff on it. The picture there with Pepsi on it, I've got another slide about that. Interesting thing there about that was Pepsi in about 1940, Pepsi started breaking the color barrier way before anybody else did. Kind of proud of them for that. Now let's talk about the sugar thing. I had always been told that the sugar issue was that Coke managed to lock up most of the sugar supply during World War II and prevent Pepsi from being available. That's true by and large, because Coke back in, and they started this in World War One, actually had lobbied and gotten the rationing boards and the people who were controlling the sugar supply during the war to favor them. So they were actually getting a lot more of the sugar than other companies like Pepsi Cola was getting. So Pepsi really struggled. And in fact, after World War One, they went bankrupt because of this. And of course, they got bought and or reorganized and got started and got going again, and have worked ever since to kind of catch up. There have been times when they were actually leading in the cola wars, and times when they weren't. They made it a fact. They made it in a factory and it came in glass bottles. The store had big conveyor belts. That's so cool, Diana. You know what that sounds like? That sounds like the bottling company, how it works. And I'm sure they still do today, just more computerized. When I was driving the Coke truck, they refilled, like I said, we did almost all returnable bottles. So every bottle came into the back of the plant every night, got cleaned and sterilized. And if there wasn't something wrong with it, got reused, and they rolled down the conveyors, got filled, put in cases, and rolled out to our trucks. Sort of a similar thing. Similar but different. Tina says we have the Utica Club Brewery, Diana. They produce. Oh, really? You can mix and match in the store. Do they bottle it right there with you, Tina, or is that all done? Probably is, so it's fizzy. Oh well, actually with soda they could do that right there. They would inject it with CO2, I believe. So anyway, This is about World War II, but this relates to World War One also. World War II is where the story I told last week about the store that I've been to that still exists, where they sell no Pepsi products because due to rationing and due to a lack of sugar, all they could get was Coca-Cola products during World War II. And the old guy that owned the store said, "Well, the hell with that. I'm just not going to sell that anymore." He couldn't get Pepsi then, so he just by God said he wasn't going. They wouldn't sell it to him, or were trying to ration it to him, or whatever they were doing to try to spread it around. He got mad and said, "Well, I just won't have it anymore." Now that's a true story. I've been to that store, um, but it may have been a little different. Now, what I didn't find was actual smoking gun that says, Coca Cola did this all, that somehow they hoarded all the sugar. Now, that is the story. That's the legend, but I couldn't find that in writing. But I do know that Coca Cola had the laws set up or the regulations set up so they were favored. And one of the reasons they got that favor was because during World War One, they said that they would provide all the soldiers overseas with refreshing, invigorating. Remember the caffeine in it? They did take the cocaine out by then, I think. But they would promise to sell it a bottle of Coca Cola to any soldier anywhere in the world for 5 cents. So the military got on board with them and they supplied, and that's been a big deal ever since. And that's part of what happened here. Um, if you read this, it says many of the bottlers unwilling to let the sugar situation be the demise of the Pepsi Cola company figured out all kinds of ways to procure sugar. They sent people out all over the world to try to find sugar. They even were going to make it, and probably did to some extent, make their syrup, which is where the sugar is added, of course, or how it's made. The syrup is made from the sugar. Many of them, they stopped bottling different flavored drinks and use all their sugar in Pepsi. But some of them actually went overseas to like Cuba and I think somewhere in South America and Mexico, where they could and actually had their syrup made there so they could bring it back into the United States and still be able to make Pepsi, because Coca-Cola did have all the sugar, most of the sugar tied up and locked up here, and they couldn't get it. During both world wars, particularly World War II, every person in this country was everything you bought was rationed, and a lot of it was you had to have tickets out of a rationing book to get your certain amount each month of stuff you could buy, and sugar was one of those things that people bought to produce cookies, cakes, whatever, and other things for their family. Coca Cola went kind of behind the scenes and got their name off that list. So none of the rationing rules applied to them. So this is a sneaky way they locked things up. They were exempt, if you will. They just didn't have to do it. And they had enough sugar that they could, keep going. This is a photo. Now, this is a World War II photograph. You can tell by the uniforms and the helmets. All these gentlemen, except one, looks like maybe he's a Pepsi guy. They're all drinking Coca Colas, and it says they were exempt from the 1942 sugar rations, and by promising service members a bottle of Coke for 5 cents wherever they were. I actually thought they should have been giving the damn things away personally. Because of this, they also Coke had a long lasting partnership with USO clubs. And as far as I know, they still do. Yep, saw that on a TV show. Did we have you? Oh, you're responding to me. Okay. Thank you, Tina. I said they broke the color barrier in 1940. It's when this happened, and I have a note about this here. Did I not? Yes. Pepsi actually, and I'll be honest, this was probably not because they felt like there was an injustice here. It was more like they were looking for the business, I'm sure. Um, Especially when they did this because they were trying to stay alive. This is when the screws were starting to get put on them about no sugar. But they actually started trying to break the color barrier as early as 1940, and that included putting African Americans and other ethnic groups within photographs and advertising. I don't know, there wasn't really TV advertisements back then, but there could have been a movie clip. Um, and they actually hired a whole um, separate group, or not a separate group, it was an integrated group of African Americans to help them figure out how do we do this. So I think they went about it the right way. Um, and this young lady was one of the pictures. Now, this photograph on the left, that may be the one on the right too, was on display at the Queens, New York Museum. I think that's what they call it, the Queens Museum. I don't know if Tina, if you've ever been down there looking around, but that might have been something down there to see. And so Pepsi was kind of, like I said, it was probably more about making money, but they were on that cutting edge of not just saying, hey, we don't need to just advertise this for white folk. Let's sell it around. Now let's talk about Walt Disney. I've always thought it was funny that this particular time period in Walt's history, that he was sponsored by Pepsi instead of Coke. If you go to any Disney um, property in the world, as far as I know, if you want a soft drink, you're going to get a Coca-Cola or some product made by Coca-Cola. But when the World's Fair started in 1964, they came to Walt, or well, before 64, they came to Walt and said, we want, these rides developed. Could you do that? Ford Motor Company had one, which part of the Ford Motor Company ride is or was for a long time still on display at Disneyland. If you've ever been to Disneyland, if you ever rode the train around, when you get towards the end of the ride, the Grand Circle Tour, almost back to Main Street, the Main Street station, you go through a tunnel, and inside that tunnel, you see dinosaurs and things. And some of those dinosaurs, or the images or similars, were in Epcot at one time at the what used to, well, it was Ellen's Big Adventure, but before that, I think it was whoever did the Tiger by the Tail, Exxon, sponsored it. Some of those same dinosaurs came from the Ford Motor Company ride. But the one that's probably more famous than any, and I can't remember what let me back up a moment. That was Ford. And General Electric, the ride they created for General Electric is today, what we know today is the Carousel of Progress. And of course, then the other one, I started to say more famous. I'm personally a Carousel of Progress fan, big fan. But the other one, and the one that sticks in everybody's brain, is It's a Small World. I wish I had the music. I could put that in it, plug that into everybody right now. So, and I don't know if I had any special notes. The ride fabricated Walt Disney. Yeah, they made these rides, and they made these rides. The World Fair was in New York. These rides were fabricated at the Walt Disney Studios in Burbank. For the Children of the World, created by WED Enterprises, it was shipped to the 1964 New York World's Fair, where it was housed at the UNICEF Pavilion, sponsored by Pepsi, which featured at its entrance a kinetic sculpture of the Tower of Four Winds. It was 120 feet tall. I read something and that was created by Wally Crump. And if you've ever seen the Wonderful World of Disney show where Walt was in it. It was done in 64, 63, maybe. Might have been done early 64 before the fair started. Like Walt did an episode where he walked through the studios and showed all this stuff happening. And he introduced Raleigh Crump. And that tower was part of what they sat and talked about, all the things that moved and, the wind blew around and all that. And if you look in the lower right hand photograph, right here, that is a picture of that kinetic tower. I read somewhere yesterday, it was just one little clip. I never found it anywhere else that said Walt hated that tower. He never did like it. That's possible, but he put it up, so it must not have been all bad. Because if he didn't like stuff, usually it didn't happen. But anyway, so that's how the World's Fair, and that's where my Pepsi Cola, about the only Pepsi Cola link I have with Walt Disney World. Although I think they may have sponsored some other shows for a little while before this or during this time period, but not long. And then Coca-Cola was, the thing. And I didn't look that up, so if somebody else wants to correct me on that, please do. And then the rest of this is just some advertising I found. That I love this one on the left. Drink Pepsi Cola. Whoopee! Zoom over your troubles with a glass of Pepsi Cola. And I can't read that exactly. It says stimulating and rejuvenating. That first one looks like it says papifying, but I don't think that would be right. Anybody else can read that, by all means do. Funny how Pepsi spawned a small world, and now you can't find the Pepsi to save your life. And no, Tina, nowhere, and you will not see one anywhere that I'm aware of. I don't think there's any, unless it's overseas. But even overseas, Coca-Cola has a huge presence. I love the bottles. That lower, if you look at that lower picture on the left, down in the lower right hand corner, there's a straight wall Pepsi bottle. The reason I bring that up is Brenda and I watch a lot of archaeology stuff and current modern archaeologists who are digging up, outhouses and walking creek banks and, finding glass bottles. And when they find a straight wall soda bottle, it's kind of unique because most of those didn't last too long before they went to something that was more curved. Even Pepsi changed their shape eventually. But I do remember wrapping my hand around 10 or 12 ounce bottles. Right, I believe they were 10-ounce bottles of Pepsi. Before they came out with a 16-ounce. That sounds weird now, but that's how. I mean, I can remember when those things came out. Here's a 5-cent Pepsi. I may have drank a 5-cent Pepsi, but most Pepsis out of machines that I remember were 10 cents. And then they started bumping up, 15 and 20 and then eventually a quarter. That's from our child, Brenda and I's childhood. Tina, you may remember that also. Chuck. I didn't say hi to Chuck. I don't know if Chuck's listening. I hope he's here. Another big logo, and this logo came into play again. I've got notes, but I'm not seeing them. This was the logo they used from 1951 to 1971. Notice there's no globe there. And then this logo came in 71 to 86 approximately. And then they worked on a little bit different, and they used it again until 1991. They used a different font. And then they brought this one back, and I remember this a few years ago. They brought this back in 2014 when they brought Pepsi Throwback out, which was the real sugar Pepsi that I still drink. That's my favorite when I can find it. It's harder to find here than other Pepsi, but when I can find it, that's what I drink. We usually try to stock up on it because I probably drink more than I should. I don't drink it all the time, but when I drink one, that's what I want. And I prefer my Pepsi in a glass over ice. Or in most cases these days, I drink it in a thermal mug so it stays nice and cold for as long as possible. My favorite thermal mugs were made by Aladdin, and there were big ones that I bought from got at Contemporary and the um, Wilderness Lodge that were big, 22 ounces, nice, good lid, and they would keep drinks cold for many, 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 many hours, and ice would stay in them. They changed them. They still had a big mug that was refillable, but they changed them, and they weren't nearly as good. Anyway, moving on. This logo came out. Whoops, where am I at? Oh, here. They used this from 97 to 2003. Then this bad boy came out roughly from 97. And, well, they also used this to 2003. This is very close to what they're using today. Bang. Let me back up. And there we go. There. This was the globe and word mark, as they call it. Those letters look odd to me, but this was supposed to be used from 2014 to 2023. Honestly, I don't look at the logo that much. I just drink it. And since I pour it out of the can, I don't have the can in my hand to look at. I thought this was fun. Here you see the Pepsi Globe, and these bottles are on a grocery store shelf in Ukraine back when it was still part of the Soviet Union. Those bottles look odd. They almost look like they've got a stopper or a ball or in the top in the neck. Look at the neck of these bottles. See this round? That could just be glass reflection, but I see it in almost all of them. Interesting. I've seen Japanese soft drinks that had something like that in it. These guys, this is little cosplay here on the left. Guys all dressed up as a couple different versions of Pepsi Man. I'm not sure where you go to dress up like Pepsi Man. I don't know if you can show up as Pepsi Man and like an Avengers Comic Con or whatever. But here they are. I can't remember if they told when that was. And I thought I put this in here for Mark's benefit. Mark also tends to drink Pepsi. Pepsi was the drink in his household growing up. I don't know exactly when they started, but supposedly, let me see, I'm not getting my words again. Okay, about 2008 was Arizona, Wyoming did a thing where they were, or the Wyoming Bottlers Association, Pepsi Bottlers Association, put on a PR thing where they were bragging about being there bottling Pepsi in Wyoming for 70 years. And I tried to get the date because they didn't say exactly when that came out, but best I could tell, it was around 2008. So what would that mean? That'd be 78. Take off. So in the 30s. I'm not going to do all the math. Makes my head hurt. I also found kind of a big deal, but I was having trouble getting text info, but I found some pictures about Texas. And what I found there was, trucks and trailers. This is in these pictures came from a display and an exhibition where they talked about Pepsi in Texas, how long it had been there, when it got there, that sort of stuff. That's an early truck and a trailer, which I thought was interesting. I have seen something like that, but these open trucks were almost a thing of the past when I drove a truck. But the company, the bottling, again, I'm going back to the red company. We did have a few of these open trucks, and occasionally you would see these on the street. You notice these things when you're driving, another brand. We would see these open trucks for other brands of soft drinks, and not just Pepsi Cola. The odd small bottling companies that came out with something like, say, Doctor Enough, or early versions of Mountain Dew, which were produced in our hometown of Johnson City, Tennessee. That's where Mountain Dew started. The two guys that invented it were actually out, I think, Western North Carolina, but they came to Johnson City to get it bottled. And believe it or not, Mountain Dew was invented so that these two guys would have something to mix their moonshine with. If they were sitting around drinking, they wanted something to, or some whiskey, but in their case, it was moonshine, I believe. I believe I could verify that. Anyway, that's where Mountain Dew actually came from. And then they got it first bottled in Johnson City, Tennessee. If you know what a Dr. Enough is, it was an early version of an energy slash health drink. And it was also bottled in Johnson City, where we came from. Uh, it was where it was bottled. The guy who invented it also was from Ohio, I think. Couldn't get it bottled anywhere up there. Nobody was interested in it. Came down to East Tennessee. Company there said, well, why not? Let's give it a shot. And you can still buy it today. In fact, it's more popular today than it's ever been, I think. The other things here, this upper picture is one of the early stock houses or storehouses where they kept Pepsi in Texas. I don't remember if this is Galveston or somewhere else. Notice that the windows are broken out, and that meant the logo on the windows pretty worn off. I thought I just printed this bond thing. If this was something that, again, part of this display, this was something they had for school kids. Since there's a big beef cattle on the front, it may have had something to do with 4-H or cattle raising, but it was sponsored by Pepsi, so I stuck it in here. And I think that is the last slide, the end. Now, but I wanted to show this picture. The Queen's Museum, again, did some display stuff, and that's where this was taken from. But as far as I know, this may still be there on one of the buildings in that area in New York, or at least it was when they were using Pepsi's, this logo and bottle. But they brought that out. I can tell by looking at that that's an early logo with a newer bottle because of the logo on the bottle. And that bottle, if you look at that bottle, it's got the swirls on the side. It looks like it's twisting. I remember those very well. My dad and mom would go to the grocery store once a week or so, and usually they came home with a carton or two of Pepsis in the 10-ounce, and then later in the 16-ounce bottles. And every evening, some nights, Mom would get some glasses out, put some ice in it, and we'd drink Pepsi, or open a Pepsi bottle or two, and we'd have that as a refreshing drink before bed. That's probably why I drink it that way today, to this day. So anyway, guys, that is that, and I'm going to try to stop that and just come back to me. And I need to get it off this screen too so I can see. Now, I haven't kept up with anything. So you guys can, let me see what's being said. Kay, why did you get retract? You retract. Have a wonderful weekend, Mike. Oh, Mike and Diana are leaving. Mike, Diana, talk to you soon. Don't be strangers. Let me know when you're available some night or some day this weekend. We'll talk. I'd like to talk hockey, Mike. Funny how Pepsi sponsors my. Oh, that's the old one. Tina remembers the logo with the script writing. So do I. I prefer Pepsi, so it's hard to go and not get a soda. I don't drink soda anymore, but Chuck does. Brenda, we have a split household. Brenda likes Coke, and I like Pepsi, and we just sat on the opposite ends of the sofa. And I drove for Coke. I only drove for Coke for 6 months or so because I needed a job. We were just married. Brenda and I had just gotten married. Or we're actually, I started working there before we got married. Got married. That's where I worked for a couple more months, and then I got my first airplane job. My first professional, real aviation job came, I don't know, Brenda, 2, 3 months after we got married, I think. So I quit the Coke job, which I didn't like anyway, because I didn't like Coke and I didn't like how they did business. And that's just from a driver's standpoint. Um, but, well, Tina, I drink coffee now most days throughout the day, and I did at work. Um, but of an evening, I like a nice cold Pepsi. I have started drinking some orange crush sometimes at night because I like the flavor and I like something a little different, but mostly it's Pepsi. Yes, it is, John. It still has bubbles. It's the bubbles that cause all. Oh, for Tina, that's her problem. Um, Michelob Ultra beer is my go-to, low carb and almost like drinking water. John, have you heard my antidote or little story about light beer? If you haven't, I'll tell you, and I'll try to clean it up for my show. Yeah, go Devils. Yeah, they need to get on. I don't know. Did they win a game this last night? I'm not sure about that. I'm afraid they're a little bit outgunned, but yes, it is, John. But it still is. Oh, that's both. Oh, good, great. They won, so they're two. I think that 2-1 or they 1-1. I think they're 2-1. Um, Now I think I haven't gotten to see their games. I've watched others when I can get them either recorded or get them off of Hulu. When they're not on a ESPN station of some sort, I can't always get them on Hulu. Oh, the Canes, that's right. Who are tough. Um, I'm I'm pretty sure New Jersey is an underdog, major probably. It's funny though, they're an underdog and Montreal's an underdog, but both of them. Correct me, John, if I'm wrong, but I believe both of them have a strong base now and young players. So I think in the next couple of years they're both going to be really good. And the Red Wings also, I think, are maybe going to be in that boat because they're rebuilding. And I'm hoping that that's what happens at Nashville. So in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, Nashville's in that position. Game 4 tomorrow. I'm pissed. It's at 3:30. I'll be playing golf. Oh no, John. Well, you know what? I don't know if you can do it or not, but record it. If you can't record it, call me. I'll give you play by play when you come home later. I'll make sure I get that one recorded. Um, yeah, I hope they win. I'd like to see them go on. I'm actually pulling for the Habs, and Washington. Ovechkin's still scoring goals, and I'm guessing that these goals count on his total. They should, even though they're playoff games, but he's still scoring them in games. I hope they're counting them. But I'll be honest, I kind of wish the Canadiens would win one more, just because they haven't in a long time. Same with Toronto. Sorry, Mike. Mike's probably gone. He doesn't like Toronto at all. Probably didn't like uh, Montreal either because they used to win everything. And I know they've won lots and they've won plenty probably. And in that respect, I don't cheer for them so much, but they've not in a long time. And I'm really glad to see some Canadian teams that are back up in the playoffs because for a couple of years there, 5 years ago, there were almost no Canadian teams in the playoffs, which I just thought was a shame. I mean, like again, it was their sport. So I'm hoping they do better. And I do kind of like Toronto. I'm a sort of a Matthews fan. Um, I'll tell you who's not doing so good right now that I thought would be better was the The Oilers. I thought the Oilers with McDavid, I thought they'd be a little bit better. But unfortunately, I do think, I will say, and I'll be happily corrected, um, I think McDavid's their main. I mean, he is their main guy, and I don't know if he's got enough backup right now. So he needs a little help too, I think. Yeah, Toronto's playing well. They are, and honestly, I thought they were about to go 3-0. Um, who are they playing? I can't remember who they're playing. Oh, they're playing. Are they playing the Red Wings? Yeah, I realize that, Tina. That's what, and that was the thing. About half the teams were Canadian, and the United States used to not have any good hockey teams. I can remember when they sucked, generally speaking. It's just that they haven't made it to the. I just hate that they hadn't made it to the playoffs in a long time. It's kind of like we came moved in and took over, and the big. I guess what I'm getting at is big cities like Los Angeles, New York, especially New York, where they've got those media outlets and money and sports has always been almost no problem. Um, they get a lot of attention. They can also afford a lot of the best players, and so they kind of take over in that regard. Whereas Canada, even the big metropolitan areas like like Montreal and Toronto and well, not Ottawa, they're not that big, even though they're the centers of you know population centers compared to L.A., New York. They're still not big, and the market's not as big. So anyway, same thing with Minnesota. Honestly, did they win? Oilers did win last night. Okay, Leafs can't sweep tonight. Oh, but you saying you don't want them to, John, or are you saying they now can't because they lost one game? Because I thought they were on the verge, or maybe they are on the verge. The reason I'm pulling for them is they've not made it past the first round of the playoffs in years now. And I also didn't realize till last night that uh, the LA Kings and the Oilers have met in the first round of the playoffs for like the last 4 or 5 years in a row. And I didn't even realize they were that. Oh, they can sweep. So they didn't get beat. Okay. Yeah, I almost expect them to do that too, to sweep. They may not, but we'll see. And I'm still when I think about it and who's winning what and in playoffs. Oh, the Blues. Who's playing the Blues? Is that Minnesota? Oh God, I need to look at my brackets. I'm sorry, I've been watching games, but I can't tell you who all's playing who right now because again, some of the games I'm not getting to see. Down here, Scripps Howard broadcasting companies are showing the game. I can't get those. Some of those I don't see at all, and I can't watch them on Hulu or I can't find them on demand. There's probably a place. I just don't know where to go get them. But anyway, for a Southern boy, I do love me some um, Winnipeg. Oh, the Blues are playing Winnipeg. Yeah, that's probably going to be tough. Although they did get beat, and really, what surprised me about the defeat wasn't as much that they got beat because I think they're beatable. They're just tough. Is that they shelled Hellbuck, and that doesn't happen very often. He's good in the goal, and which was another thing that happened. Hey, Adventures by D, welcome in. Glad to see you. Hope you're having a good Saturday. Um, Last night in the Washington Montreal game, both teams, their goalies got hurt and had to be, taken out of the game and new goalies put in, not because they were getting beat, but because they both got injured. So I don't know how that's going to play out in the next day or two. That could make a big difference in those two games. And I think right now the advantage is probably in the for the for Washington. From what I heard and what I know about the goalies that they've got right now to replace those guys, but we'll see. And man, did they have a god awful terrible fight last night? And I'm not a big promoter of fights in anything but hockey, but man, they had one that carried over into the bench area and got a bunch of guys out for. There was a couple of guys, I think it might have been Montreal, that got, or maybe one on each team. Actually, they got 12 minutes of penalty time starting the third period. They just, hey Chuck, welcome back in, buddy. He heard us talking hockey. He couldn't resist. Did you see that game, Chuck, by any chance? Washington and Montreal, and at the end of the second period, or the end of the second period, a hell of a fight broke out as they were going back to the locker room. Like I said, it carried over into the bench area. People were down on the floor. It was bad. I don't know that anybody got hurt bad necessarily, but the whole thing was. And some guy from Washington actually made an ass of himself. I thought because he was making fun of somebody that he said, he was, hey, you got hurt. He was making fun of them, calling them crybabies. So it's a wonder. It's no wonder they jumped his butt. I can't remember. That might have been Wilson. I think he's one of the guys that got 12 minutes of penalty time. That's a lot of time in a hockey game, considering a lot of guys don't play 12 minutes total in a hockey game. I guess he'd be refreshed for the latter part of the game. Chuck said he saw the end of the second period. Yeah, Tom Wilson. I thought it was Wilson that was doing that. Yeah, it was old time hockey, all right. It was kind of wild. I just happened to. I think we were watching something else, and I was actually recording that game. I went back and watched it later, but I'd flipped over there just to see how that game was going. I can't remember who else. There was another channel, another game, and I missed that. And I thought I had them all set up to record, and I only got one. So I was very disappointed in that. Last night I got one game to watch because Hulu didn't have any, and I don't know where else to go get them. If I didn't get them recorded, I got to make sure not everything's recorded. Because I usually go to bed on a hockey game, and even though if I fall asleep, I can always look it back up. It may sound crazy, but I fall asleep to them quite often. Chuck said I saw the end of the second. Oh, that's what I'm still talking about. Anyway, where was I going with that? I had a thought. I had a thought strung out there, and I don't remember what I was going to say. Oh, I just happened to flip over there just as that period was ending, and I saw all that breaking out. Well, actually, they'd already started when I flipped over there, so I wasn't sure exactly. And I'm still not sure. I need to go back and watch it again. Was it something? Was it a late or a bad hit that got it started, Chuck? Man, and there were some hard hits in that game. I've seen some hard hits in a couple of games. I tell you what, this has been to me the last couple of years. This series, this playoff period, is some of the hardest hockey playing all around that I've seen in a while. I don't know. It seemed like some of that had settled down. Teams in the last 2 or 3 years things didn't seem to be quite so frantic, or what's the word they like to use? Desperate to move on. But boy, they do now. Also, something I've noticed is that a lot of players now have beards most of the year, so I guess growing a beard for the playoffs is not a big deal anymore. I can remember that was a big deal, and some people didn't like it, and some people did like it. Not everybody did it, but a lot of guys would grow beard until they were out of the playoffs, then they'd shave. Turned it on just as the fight started. You saw about what I did then, Chuck. You need the you need the bodies for. Yeah, you do, John. That's no kidding. And you need some young tough guys that can take those licks. That's for sure. Because they're hitting hard. Hockey's a rough sport anyway, and then when you start getting banged around, I mean, if you watch enough hockey, you realize wow, these guys they're tough. I mean, they may not be as big physically or be able to press as much weight as say a lineman in the NFL or some linebackers, but by God, they're every bit as tough or not, if not tougher. They take a lot of hard licks and dish them out, which also hurts. Let's see, Dave, or your significant other whose name I can't remember. You guys got anything planned for this week or next weekend or this coming week? If you ever get a chance to sit behind the glass low, you can tell how physical it is. Oh, you missed the Thrashers. Yeah, I bet. I've never been able to do that, Dave. I've never sat down close, but I've thought that same thing. And I've seen kids down close to the glass, and I've seen some guys hit that glass. And I've often wondered if the kids don't just about wet their pants because, man, they bang in hard. I can't, unfortunately, I can't afford those down close tickets to a Predators game. I might could do that at the Knoxville teams game. Maybe next winter or this coming season, I'll try to get down and maybe we can go down and watch some hockey with the Knoxville Ice Bears. Maybe I can get down close on some of those and get that kind of action. I'd like to. I'd love to be down close. A guy I used to work with, it was one of our managers. His father, no, his brother was a sponsor, some kind of sponsor for Nashville, a low level kind of local sponsor. And he had season tickets, and his dad went, his brother went, and they had seats right down behind they weren't against the glass, they were actually behind the bench. They personally knew, the first coach for Nashville. He was there 14 years. Went to Washington, helped them win a national championship. He was their coach, or not a national championship. Won the Stanley Cup. Um, what's his name? Weather. It's warm, Dave, but it's been rainy. It's the sun. It's cloudy, broken, scattered clouds, and I think we're supposed to get more rain today. Yesterday started out decent and then got really stormy for a little while. I don't know if they were calling for any god awful storms, you know, thunderstorm watches or warnings that they were telling people to take cover. But boy, up our valley here that we're in, this stretch between the mountains and the hills over here, the wind came roaring up through here yesterday afternoon, rattled my roof big time. They did Six Flags and Braves games. Like, oh, I'll have to go back and check those then. So laying low this weekend. I hadn't been to a Braves game in forever. Barry Trotz, thank you, Dave. You're correct. So they knew Barry Trotz. I can't remember now how. And they were saying that he was when he was in Nashville. And I'm going to guess now that he was a really, behind the scenes, he was a really good guy. I'm not saying he wasn't in front of the scene or out front in the cameras. I always kind of liked his coaching style personally. It worked for Washington, and I think he won a cup with somebody else. He never managed to get one at Nashville, unfortunately. But he's back there now as the general manager. So I'm really hoping that the general manager they had for a long time, I think, was very good and helped them build the teams that were good in the mid-teens. I think when they go to the Cup. They played for the Stanley Cup in 2016, maybe 2017. Oh, you guys had a big storm last night. I hope everything's okay. This one rattled our roof, and the trees were really rocking and rolling up here on the hill. I heard it coming. This is a phenomenon that I'm learning from this house in this valley. Because when stuff comes roaring up through here from the west, it almost like it picks up speed, sort of like a Venturi effect or something. And when it hits this end, I can hear it coming up the holler here, up the valley, and then it hits us, and the trees start shaking first. And this, we have 10 roofs on our house and this building, the library that I'm in, and you can hear it. It makes a lot more noise than I was used to in the house we lived in before. So it was really rattling the roof, but it didn't get. There was no hail, and the wind wasn't sustained. It kind of blew through, and then it eased up, and then it just rained like crazy. Anyway, Chuck, you got anything you want to add about hockey? I don't want to. I know you came in to talk about it, so the players are so young now they have to start growing beards when they say that's a good point, Chuck. I've seen, and I can't say much. When I was, mine was terrible too. It's not. I mean, in some ways, I don't. It's not much better now. It's just that I don't. I've let it grow a lot more. I kind of wish it was blacker. I've thought about coloring it. Get some of that. Oh, they advertise it at sporting events all the time. That the players, brush into their mustaches and their beard to get some color back. I don't know if Brenda would go for that. I don't know. I don't know what I'd look like if it was all black again. Sometimes I'd like to try it for a little while. It'd grow back out and turn. I mean, what? Maybe I can get some of that stuff that's supposed to wash out. But I learned a lesson. A friend of mine did that. He had gray hair. His daughter put a washout color thing in his hair, turned it orange, which was the plan, but it was supposed to wash out. Guess what? Never washed out until he finally it grew out enough he shaved it all off and started over again. It's kind of funny, actually. She talked him into doing it. Promised him it would wash out. He just have to have it around the house for the weekend. She was doing it for a cosmetology class, I think in high school still. And she said, Dad, just do this, and by Monday, it'll all we go back to work. It'll all be washed out. You'll just look normal. Mm-mm. That stuff stayed. It didn't wash out. I know he had it for several weeks. I was actually working with Boy Scouts with him at the time, and he and I grew up together in the boys, and we were both in Boy Scouts. We were both Eagle Scouts, and when I moved to Knoxville, I found out he had a troop here. He was a scout master. And so I got involved and worked with him for a while. And that was when he did the hair thing. And he unfortunately passed away a few years after I got to Knoxville. And another one of my classmates that died way too young. We are or were supposed to have a 50-year reunion this year. Brenda and I signed up to try to get on the list to make sure we got all the notices for it. We wanted to go. I wanted to go. Partially because I'd like to find out how many of us are still alive. Hopefully, quite a few, but I do know several that are gone, unfortunately. And I guess that's to be expected. Hell, we're pushing 70. I just realized the way I hold this cup, you can't see my snake. That is my Sons of Liberty cup, and the snake is the replication of the one that Benjamin Franklin designed in about before the Revolution. Most people see the coil snake and the don't tread on me thing, but that came later, much later. The chopped up snake was in the mid 1760s, and I think he created that particular sign that as part of their, actually might have been Sons of Liberty, but they were trying to make sure all the colonies, joined together. Anyway, that's Ben Franklin snake. That's not a don't tread on me snake, which was actually called the Gadsden flag and was the first original flag of the United States Navy. So the Commodore I talked about earlier probably flew that flag, at least for a while, until they replaced it with an American flag of some sort. What was his name? Commodore Hopkins. Okay, it got real quiet and chat. Did everybody leave all of a sudden? I know it's getting long. I'm going to shut down here in a few minutes. Or I'm just not seeing everybody. Maybe I'm not seeing everybody. Or it could be that everybody's finally reached their limit of 10 and they've shut me off. Dave's still here. Is Carol still here? Did she have to leave? That's the problem when I've got to show up and cover my screen. I couldn't see everybody. So I hope I didn't miss too many people saying bye. There's Carol. There's Carol. There's Carol. Oh, she is gone. She said she's taking daughter and her friends bowling. Have a great day. I hope they have fun bowling. Damn it! Sorry I missed that and didn't say bye. And I know Diana and Mike are gone. I tried to say bye to them even though they were leaving. Now I was eating the big TV with Chuck. I know you put us on TV. Well, you just had me this week. You didn't have my color commentator, the other guy that can make things pretty interesting. I'd like to think I can too, but he's the world of knowledge when we can get it out. He'll be back next week, should be. I'm hoping he don't get hurt this weekend, honestly, out working cattle, punching cows. When he was a little bit younger, he used to actually help them do all the roundup, and they'd go up into their winter range area and gather all the cows and their calves and bring them back, and they would actually herd them just like a cattle drive of old and herd them back down to the main part of the ranch where they did all the doctoring and branding and castrating and all that stuff. And he said that some days they'd put in like 40 miles in a saddle. Now I used to ride horses too, and I'm gonna tell you something. 40 miles in the saddle takes some getting used to. We used to ride in the mountains some, and I can remember not being on a horse for a few months or something and getting on one and riding up through the mountains all day, maybe going 10 miles, 12 miles maybe, and be so sore I couldn't hardly sit down, much less or walk. My backside was the old cartoons where the cowboy went out and then ended up with a pillow on his butt, was just about pretty dang close. And it hurts. I can't see what that is, John. Yeah. All it takes that to be a peach, which in emoji language often represents a derriere. Did you ever go riding, John? Did you ever ride out west when you were out there in the Air Force? Did that occasion ever come up where somebody said, "Hey, John, let's go out and punch a few cows with these buddies of mine out here and get on a horse and ride all day. And then you go back to that missile silo and you think, oh my God, what did I do? Good for you, John. That's good. I used to love to ride. Brenda used to ride, and then she got to where she couldn't be around horses. I'm guessing she either left or fell asleep again. Um, but she she went riding one day. I'm sure I've told this, but she went riding one day, and I came home from work. Actually, I might have been working night shift at the time. That was when we lived up this way, and I was working my first airplane job for a company up here. I came home and she turned around and looked at me, and I about wet my pants. Her eyes looked like they were just about to exit her face. Her face was so swollen, her eyes were just literally bugged out, Google eyed. And I thought, oh my God, what have you done? And it was horse. It was a horse dander. She always wanted to be a vet. I mean, in high school, she always talked about being a vet. She thought she would like to go and get into vet school and try to be a veterinarian. And that horse riding experience was one of the reasons why she decided that probably wasn't in her future. My future in laws had a ranch. Oh, really? Cattle and horses, but the marriage never happened. Oh, well, life goes on. Well, I didn't know that, John. I can say, I'm glad you got to work, do some ranch stuff. Sorry. We'll say sorry it didn't work out. Maybe you didn't want it to work out in the end, but anyway, glad. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I'm stumbling all over myself trying not to be mean or sound mean or insult you, which is very important that I don't do that. I wish I could move my chat window over to this side of my screen. I just had an idea. I might do that. I might move this screen over here and that screen over there. Because I know this is other people may not do this. They do live streams like this where they're mostly sitting in a chair. But I've got my StreamYards window up over here, and I've got the YouTube window up over here because they're a little different in how they act and when things pop up. And so I usually have both of them open. It might be confusing, but it works for me. And I turn the sound off over here. I mean, I turn the sound off so that I'm not just echoing, which may not be as big a problem as it was when I first started because I've got echo cancellation stuff on my mic, and this mic works very well. I mean, I'm sitting 5 feet, 4 feet away from it, and you guys say you hear me just fine. If you don't, please let me know, and I'll adjust because I used to sit closer to it a little bit, and then I moved it when I was at the other house, and it's okay. There went something else zooming by. I may have hummingbirds. I need to look. I may need to get a feeder out. Anyway, so now it's sitting on top of my desk, out of the way where I'm not knocking it down and stuff, and it seems to work. I guess if I ever do a podcast where I need to be more focused on the audio, maybe I'd move it down here right in front of me and I get real close to it and I can talk. My problem is I tend to talk too loud, so I overpower it. We hear you just fine, but yes, I think you'd still have to mute YouTube. Yeah, I mean, I do. Because here's the problem: if I don't mute it, it echoes in my ear, and since there's a 20-second delay between over here and over here, that really messes you up when you're talking. Because then I don't know where I'm at. I get confused. I get tangled up in my own circle of vocalizations. Okay, guys, it's 12:32. I think I'm going to shut her down here. You guys have sat with me patiently for a couple of hours, and I know people have other things to do. Um, so I'm not going to keep everybody clogged up. Thanks for being here. Um, it's I do maybe I have a small crowd, but it's a good crowd, and I like you. I love you guys for being here. It means the world to me to have at least you know the group I have, and to have such a loyal group. So, really appreciate all that. And I look forward to being back next week. Like I said, I think we're going to talk about, I'm going to do a thing about cattle roundups. What was that? Cattle roundups and the history thereof, and the fact that people still do it today. Big ranches out west still have cattle drives, and sometimes they may use, if they're really big, they may use more mechanical devices to help out. But horses still play a huge role in it. Once you get up close to animals, I don't know anybody that ropes critters from the back of their ATV, but they could. Much rather see them on horseback or a mule. Have a great day. See you guys 2 weeks. Oh, you're going to Pinehurst. Well, John, what town's Pinehurst in? There was a course over in North Carolina that I've been to. Didn't play it, just been there. Drove by it. My dad talked about it, but I can't remember. I don't. It's probably not Pinehurst. It might have been further west. Oh, in Pinehurst. Well, duh. I'll have to look it up. Thank you, Chuck. You too, buddy. Good luck in any hockey games, whoever you're rooting for right now. I know your team's not there, but maybe I'm sure you're pulling for somebody. Well, I am. My team's not there either. No, it is south of Raleigh. Maybe I have been by there then. Anyway, have fun, John. You'll have to tell us all about it. You're going to play, right? Not just to watch somebody. So I know you'll have fun, probably meeting buddies down there or something. So chase that little white ball and have fun. Be safe. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend. I hope the weather's better where you're at. The sun's shining here right now, so maybe it's better here, and I just don't realize it. Uh, Brenda wanted to mow some of the yard, and maybe if the wind blows a little bit and the sun stays out, she can. But it was, man, as far as I'm concerned, it was way too wet to mow this morning. I'm an old fashioned kind of guy. We didn't used to be able to mow when it was wet. Of course, we were walking behind mowers back then, so maybe that was part of it. Anyway, everybody have a great weekend. Thanks for being here. Love y'all. Don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment. 7 words or more helps it analog, helps the algorithm. Maybe we can pick up a few more strays like we had today. And no, it never hurts to bring in a little bit of new blood. So I encourage you to share us out. We're never going to get huge, but we got smoke today. Fire. Oh, really, John? I didn't realize that. Well, maybe some of this rain will get over your way and take care of some of that fire. Anyway, I'm going to lose my voice here pretty quick. So everybody have a good day. See you real soon. Take care. Bye bye. Of course, it would help if I get to the end.